Hey guys, uh, another update, and this one I wanted to really talk about some stuff, but just to update everyone from the last video, I had my doctor's appointment yesterday. Meant to post a video yesterday, but there was just a lot going on with stuff, so I couldn't really get around to it. Especially by the time I could, it was night and doesn't really have like the best lighting for stuff. So I am in the AM to post this video as soon as I can. But um, yesterday I finally got my physical ID in the mail, which is great. So I can actually start going about getting everything switched over in regards to insurance and car and phone and all the fun stuff. Um, Dr. appointment went well. Took my blood. I'll probably hear back from them whether or not I have to go back down in dosage. We'll find out soon. Probably next day or so, whenever the lab results get back. Um, and in a few hours, I'll be going to my hysterectomy consult. So, and figure out when I can set up something like that for, what's in my best interest when it comes to my insurance and financially, and ideally all of it should be covered. It's just a matter of taking care of the anesthesiologist, since my condition is bad enough that I can get it written off as a necessary surgery. So at least I have that going for me. But since I didn't have a huge update this week, I really wanted to go and talk about something that's really important, especially within the trans community, which is dysphoria. I already planned on talking about it this week, and then I also had a friend kind of, you know, ask me about it since I'm further along with my hormones and stuff. So I was like, oh, well, that kind of works out. I can talk about it in my video since I was already planning on it. But first and foremost, you know, trans or not, but especially my trans brothers and sisters out there, you are valid. You are loved. And even if you don't think you're passing, or you haven't started, or you're barely into it, or things aren't quite going the way you are still loved and important. And that's something that I just wanted to say to you guys, because especially in some people's living situations, they just don't hear that enough. But when it comes to dysphoria, it can be bad. Even people who have been on hormones and have their top surgery and everything that's falling, they still experience dysphoria, and it never gets easier. I mean, sometimes the days themselves aren't as bad, or maybe not experiencing it as often, but it's still something that's there, and it's still something that's really important to talk about, because it it can drive people to extreme measures, just not being comfortable with themselves. And you are valid with your dysphoria no matter how intense that you feel it. Whether you feel dysphoria just for everything and you're just one giant ball of anxiety, or you're one of the few people that just really doesn't experience dysphoria. And that doesn't make you any less trans if you don't really experience dysphoria or not. Some people are fairly happy with their body, just not exactly. They can roll the punches and deal with stuff, and sometimes this is really difficult. And you can have non-trans related dysphoria too. I definitely have been experiencing it a lot since going on hormones. Actually, a lot, almost just as much as even before. Because you want things to happen so fast, but it does take time. You want your beard to grow in. You want to go off and get all your surgeries. And your body's changing and doing stuff, and your hormones are all over the place. And I definitely have been getting it with, because I've been gaining a lot of weight. I mean, a lot of it, pretty much most of it's all muscle weight. You can't really see that I'm getting bigger. I'm just getting denser, and that's been really bugging me, because I've never weighed this much in my entire life, even at my fattest, and that's been really putting a damper on me, because even though I know I'm not obese or anything like that, I'm average sized, it still just it still messes with you because it's still your weight. I'm gained 30 pounds since hormones, and I'm coming up 4.5 months right now on hormones, and that's definitely been something that's been bugging with me, which is also like because your body's changing, and my hips are moving, and the way the muscles sit on you, even my pants have gotten snug, and even though it's not really from fat, it just really gets to you, and it just makes you really depressed, especially with like how slow like maybe like my facial hair comes in, and and then I have like my non-trans related dysphorias that I have, like, and they don't have to even make sense. Like mine are, I'm fairly bow-legged, so I'm not really a big fan of wearing shorts just because I don't have what I consider like a normal calf like leg look, and it's something that I've always been self-conscious about forever. And I just have bad days and good days with that too. So no matter what kind of dysphoria that you experience and how intense or how often, it's valid. It's just human nature, especially with the way that the media portrays how we're supposed to look and act and dress, and as long as you're comfortable, you know, fuck anybody else. And that's another thing that you really have to understand with dysphoria is that, especially with your family and your friends, they sometimes don't understand it as well as you think they would with having body image issues and stuff, because yours goes to like a whole nother level. And of course, you have your friends that maybe have other trans friends, so maybe they're a little more, cognizant of what's going on so they can understand. But there's a lot of your family, your friends, your loved ones, your significant others that it takes time. It takes time to teach them and for them to understand. So, yeah, sometimes they might say something that maybe just irks you the wrong way, or flares your dysphoria, or just makes you just it just drives you insane, and you have to understand like this is also new for them too. Yes, you're the one that's experiencing the dysphoria and everything that goes along with it, but they're experiencing it from the outside. They're still experiencing it with you, and even when it gets bad, like don't don't get angry, don't get mad at them. And yeah, you can be upset. It's totally valid, but just take them aside and let them know. Don't just assume they're magically going to know and understand and be considerate. There's things that they're so used to experiencing and saying that it can be something super simple, especially like when talking to a significant other, like, "Oh, you look really good today." Well, maybe that day you're feeling really dysphoric, and that's not exactly what you want to hear. It's like, yeah, I mean, I know that, but like, I just don't feel manly enough today. I don't feel like quite like I should be, and you want them to and like I said, just talk with them. The only way they can learn is if you teach them. And I mean, the only time it's like I feel like it's acceptable to be upset is if it's something that you keep going over and over with them and they just aren't trying. Like I said, it's not going to come overnight. It's going to take time, like especially with your name and pronouns, and just little things, but just take it with a grain of salt and work together to grow with each other. Because, I mean, it doesn't get easier, but it can. And eventually, like, maybe you'll get to a point that you are more comfortable with yourself, and maybe those little dysphoric times just only flare up once in a blue moon, just like anybody else. It's normal to have, like, just everything's just not sitting on you right, and you're valid. It's 100% valid, and it's okay. In the context of the world, it does get better. It does get better. Sometimes it takes longer, and sometimes, like, you're so jealous of other people because they've gone so much farther than you, and they've already, like, oh, they started hormones, or they already had top surgery, they have a beard, they have this, they have that. And I know it does get better, and it does get easier. It does in the retrospect of everything. But when you're talking, like, it still happens. It doesn't magically go away. And that's something you definitely have to understand, whether you're, pre-T, pre-everything, or 5 or 6 years on it with everything like settled and you're all good. It still happens. But just beware of, take everything with a grain of salt that happens, because sometimes they don't people don't understand that what they're saying can trigger you unless you tell them. Don't just assume. And understand that it can be the smallest little thing. And dysphoria still happens. And dysphoria is still valid. Like I said, no matter how big the spectrum. And at the end of the day, like, if you're having a super bad day, reach out to somebody. Don't just sit there and let it eat you inside. Reach out to someone who's maybe like like a big brother, a big sister, or something in your community, or like a really good friend. Like, just have someone talk with you, or come over and just hang out with you, and just be there to help put you in better spirits. Because the longer you let it dig and eat at you, is when things can get bad. And I've already seen so much, murder and suicide and everything within our community. And at the end of the day, like, we may be part of the LGBT community, but sometimes people forget about that T. And even people who are also trans sometimes just aren't there for each other. Like, oh, like, I've seen so much things like, you're not valid unless you feel dysphoria. You're not valid with, like, no. As long as you're in the trans spectrum, you're trans. And it doesn't matter how intense you feel dysphoria, whether you don't at all, or maybe that you identify as he, him, as transgender and, AFAB, but you don't mind wearing feminine clothing or wearing makeup and stuff. No matter what, you're valid, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But we need to be here for each other. Because at the end of the day, like I said, that T at the LGBT at the end right there, sometimes people forget about it. Even us who are part of that little T. We need to look out for each other. We got to be there for each other. And we got to understand that everyone's going to experience things differently. Everyone. There's no real case that's going to be exactly the same. Maybe similar, but I've just seen even so much animosity and hate within our community. It's like, what are we doing? We're driving each other apart, we're pushing each other apart, and we're giving people like valid reasons to discredit us for things. And if we don't stick up for each other, who is? So just remember that we're a community, a very exclusive community. And we gotta look out for each other. Especially when they're younger or going through some stuff. Like, I'm 27 years old, and I've just seen so much hardship with everybody. Especially the younger kids. And especially when, like, I live in North Carolina, I live in the South, and I've seen so many families just completely throw away their kids. And they have nowhere to go, and they have no one to look for. So you gotta step up. If you even sometimes are having a decent day and you see someone kind of just crashing and burning, speak up, step up, do something with it. So, I mean, just in conclusion, just, you are valid, you matter, you are important, you are trans enough, and you are loved. And even if you can only help one person out there, it's enough, especially if that person is you. Because you matter, you belong here for a reason. Maybe you haven't found it yet, but you matter. And my door is always open. Always feel free, like, if you just need to talk, feel free to reach out, especially to me. I don't mind you messaging me on, like, my Tumblr or anything like that. Just if you need help, reach out. And I guess that's really all I wanted to say. I will keep you posted with everything involving my hysterectomy. I'll let you know about my levels with my hormones and everything like that. And with my move, so many things are happening right now. But just end on a good note and be there for each other. And I will see you next week. Bye.